Welcome to The Real Life Buyer. Whether you are buying for yourself or your business, here you will find tips, techniques and knowledge to support your journey to buying smart. Interviewing business owners and technical experts to give you information and guidance before parting with your money. Save money, time and get what you want when you want it. Now introducing The Real Life Buyer, Dave Barr.
Hello and welcome to The Real Life Buyer. Today, I'm delighted to introduce you to Dr. Charlene Walters from North Carolina. Charlene has a BA in English, an MBA in management, and a PhD in business admin and marketing. She is a published author, business and branding mentor, consultant, coach, speaker, a host of Launch, a business talk show featuring and streaming on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV, and is a mother of 2 daughters. Her latest book, Launch Your Inner Entrepreneur, 10 Mindset Shifts for Women to Take Action, Unleash Creativity, and Achieve Financial Success, was recently published, and Charlene already has 2 more books in the pipeline called What's Next? Emerging, Leading, and Profiting in a Post-COVID World, and Own Your Other. She has featured on numerous podcasts and writes a blog called Entrepreneurship, Life Enthusiasm, and Energizing Your Brand. And I could talk on and on because this lady has an incredible resume. I am absolutely inspired and in awe by what Charlene has managed to do. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Charlene to the podcast. Hello, Charlene.
Hey, Dave. Thanks so much for having me on today. I'm super excited to be here.
That's lovely. And I am too. As I said, I've never had such a long resume from anybody. What you've achieved in your short lifetime is incredible. So 10 out of 10 for that fantastic effort.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. If we could start, you've had a challenging and varied career and dealt with a number of personal challenges. Would you mind sharing highlights of your journey so the audience may appreciate how you have arrived at where you are now?
Absolutely. So I started off, I grew up in Connecticut. I was an English major undergrad. I always wanted to write. I really didn't think much about business early on. And I always hated the cold weather. Connecticut is a really cold place. So as soon as I finished college, I moved to Miami, Florida, getting to a nice warm spot. And my first job was in sales. And I really fell in love with business and selling and decided to learn more. I went back to school to get my MBA and eventually my PhD in marketing. And I had various positions in higher ed, in marketing, kind of going back and forth between the two. Eventually, I really decided that I loved curriculum. It sort of combined my passion for writing with my passion for business. And I eventually got put in charge of developing a digital entrepreneurship MBA program where I began working with entrepreneurs, kind of mentoring them, picking out our books, our curriculum, helping them work on plans to further their business. And I also got involved a little bit with Entrepreneur Magazine's mentoring platform as well, and started doing more writing and speaking, and eventually went on to write my book, which had always been a goal of mine, to get it published. And during that time, I also met my husband. We had 2 girls, and unfortunately, I also encountered some personal tragedy when my girls were just 2 and 4. My husband left for work one day, was involved in an accident, and never came home. And I, was just dealing with grief, very sad, wasn't sure how I was going to do everything. I was in the middle of my PhD. I had these 2 toddlers running around, and I just thought, there's no way I can take care of 2 kids on my own. There's no way I'll finish this PhD. There's no way I'm going to do all those things that I want to do. But as you know, as anyone with children knows, you can't just sit around and feel sorry for yourself with 2 toddlers running around. So I had to really dig deep, and I went on. The girls are in high school now, and I finished the PhD. I went on to achieve many goals, and I'd like to tell this story, particularly for other people that are going through a tough time out there, just to know that, things don't necessarily turn out how you want or how you envisioned, but everything will be okay. And you'd be surprised sometimes at where life will take you.
That's quite a difficult story, I should think, to tell. I was quite taken aback when I read the things I did as well. And for you to have turned things around, as I said, is quite incredible. But I guess that is that history that has given you the urge and drive to write the book that you have. Can you explain what was the actual drive? Was it purely because of the personal issues they've experienced, or was there more to it than that?
Yeah, there's a lot to it actually. So I started thinking about, where I could add value, what other books were on the market. I really enjoyed entrepreneurship and I felt like there weren't a lot of books aimed specifically at women. And as a sole breadwinner for my family, a lot of women are in the same situation. I think in the US, it's around 42% or more, and it's similar in other countries too. You know, we're having to kind of come up with new ways to, feed our families and take care of everything. And entrepreneurship is a really great option for women and for men too, because we have that control over our earnings. We have that control over our schedule. We're able to balance everything that we need to do, dealing with our families, dealing with our work. And entrepreneurship, I found, is a great balance. So I thought that putting this book out there would really help women who are in similar situations. And also, I think it came at a great time when during the pandemic, we saw a lot of women exiting the workforce, due to a variety of reasons, whether they were more impacted by furloughs or layoff, and some just left voluntarily because they were having to do so many things at home, homeschooling their kids, taking care of things. So I think the timing was really great. And I do really hope that it helps women and the men. A lot of men have read the book too out there who need help during this time.
Yes, I guess that it's the instability that everybody suddenly faced. Those jobs that seemed to be there day in, day out suddenly disappeared, or
Yes.
certainly were put on hold. And that's unnerving for anybody. So I fully understand why people started to think in a different way and try to think of what else could I do that I'm in control as opposed to somebody else is in control of what I do. You can't just always guarantee you can turn up and get the paycheck anymore.
Yes,
So
I learned a new term called necessity entrepreneurship when you have to turn to entrepreneurship out of necessity. And that happened to a lot of people during the pandemic.
yeah, absolutely. So you talk about mindset shifts. It's quite interesting going through the chapters. Would you mind sort of briefly going through the 10 that you refer to and perhaps embellish on a few that are close to your heart?
Definitely. So I am a firm believer that you can do whatever you set your mind to. It's about just sticking with it, having that tenacity, making your plans, your goals, and then taking steps to make them happen. And then having the resilience you need when you hit those obstacles, you hit those setbacks. I like to think of this as an entrepreneurial attitude. And the first shift you need to make is really taking action, because taking action is at the heart of entrepreneurship. Jumping into entrepreneurship, becoming a small business owner or a business owner in general, requires that leap. We as people, we like that security. We don't want to give up that paycheck. We're getting that's nice, that's comfortable for us. So it's taking that initial leap and then continuing to take it, and then just developing ways to keep moving along when you hit those rejections, you have that failure. Because that's why a lot of people give up on business, because we see all of these wonderful success stories in the media and social media. We see people like, we think they happened overnight. It was really easy for them. They just clicked their fingers, they got all these sales. And that's not the case at all. It's really a lot goes into it, takes a lot of patience. So this is about doing those things you need to help you become more successful, becoming more confident. There's something known as imposter syndrome, which a lot of people suffer from. And it's that feeling that you don't really belong. Maybe you've only gotten lucky. You haven't earned your successes. So people have to do what they can to build up that confidence and overcome that imposter syndrome. And it happens to all of us. And, I still have days where I feel bad. I'll have something great happen. Then I'll have 3 or 4 bad things. And I have to find a way to pull myself out of that rut, to keep moving forward, going after what I want, coming up with plan B, C, D, E, and F. Other things that we need to work on are managing our time, because it's about how productive we are. We've got to work, smarter, not harder. We've got to learn to delegate, to outsource, and just improve how we're concentrating our money mindset, focusing on those revenue generating activities. A lot of times we want to focus on all the fun stuff associated with entrepreneurship. But if we're not really focusing on sales and bringing that money in, we won't be in business for long. So those are just kind of the highlights of some of the things. But really, being successful as an entrepreneur has everything to do with mindset.
Yeah, and you just touched on a few things there, procrastination being one. And as you said, the fear of failures. And that is something that's quite unnerving for people. What kind of things could you suggest could take people out of those, shall we say, spirals of demise? Is there any thoughts there, that should lift you up and say, hey, I've got some skills here, some competence. I'm better than I think I am. What do you think is a good way to think about those things?
Definitely. So, when it comes to your confidence, there are some quick tips that you can do. One of them I suggest is to make a list of everything you've accomplished, everything you've done, everything that's happened in your entrepreneurial journey. Hang it somewhere. So, if you're feeling bad, you're feeling like an imposter, your rejection or failure that you've just gotten has hit you. Look at it, read it, tell yourself all of the things you've done. Remind yourself, we all have to do that. We have to pull on that from time to time. If you're going into a high stakes situation, maybe it's a big pitch, a meeting, practice beforehand. Open up your Zoom, record it, watch yourself, prepare. I have always found the more nervous I am, or the more I feel like I'm out of my comfort zone, that's when I really prepare. And when you really prepare, that's when you do your best for something. So those are good strategies. You can also call a friend, ask them to tell you what's great. Have also an ups and downs buddy. This is somebody you can celebrate with if you win, or if you had a failure, rejection, something bad's happened. They're the person you can talk it through with. And you have to learn to embrace failure as well. There's always this silver lining. So maybe you lost a client, maybe something didn't go well with your pitch, but then you have to look at it. There's an opportunity here. I can learn what I did wrong. I can ask for feedback. And then I can start thinking about what's now possible. So I lost that big client. Maybe it's possible that I can go on to do a different, bigger project now. Or maybe there are 2 or 3 other better clients for me that are coming in this place. So just try to keep your eye on those things and remind yourself of all you're accomplishing. I know for me, I'm very impatient. I always feel like things are moving too slowly for me. So I always suggest keeping a list, a journal of everything that you're doing, and then flipping back through it. And then you'll be surprised at how much you've really accomplished. And you can look back a month ago and say, oh, that was what I was worried about a month ago. I'm so much further than that. So do those things that lift you up and remind you of how capable you really are.
Hmm. You mentioned the word journaling there, and that's something that's becoming, I've seen more talked about and certainly popular, whether it's so much the guys, I see certainly a lot of ladies talking about that. Something, to be honest, I struggle with. I've tried it and put it down. I've struggled to get into that process. Have you got any thoughts on why is that so important, and why should make the effort to try and record, those key thoughts?
I think it's really important. One thing I do in terms of journaling, maybe you don't love writing, so maybe that's why you're struggling with it a little bit more. I have a little teeny journal that has me record 2 to 3 moments of joy throughout the day. And I will admit that I don't do it every day, but I do it from time to time. And I find just even doing that, concentrating on the good things that are happening, really changes my mindset. So when you reflect and take notes, it really just helps you in the long run to reflect on things and to focus on things that are positive and that forward momentum. Versus if we're in our head, generally speaking, as humans, we sometimes try to dwell on the negative things, the things that go wrong. We can be hard on ourselves, we can beat ourselves up. So if we start kind of purposely concentrating on the better things that are happening, it actually changes the way that we think and approach things. And I know I'm making it sound like, oh, it's all easy and I'm positive all the time. I will tell you right now, that's not the case. I will feel that, that rejection, that failure just as hard as the next person. but I've been really good about finding those coping strategies just to get myself out of it. And journaling can be a great one.
Okay. There's a number of people who talk about other things like the way you plan your day. A lot of people advocate that you get up early in the morning. Some are really early in the morning, sort of 4 o'clock sort of people. And they advocate you taking some exercise, you eating in a certain way, you perhaps do some meditation and so forth. Do you see that as a very good start to the day, something that people should consider doing day in, day out to get that rhythm, so to speak?
I think, it's up to you and how you best work. Some people are naturally morning people. If you're a morning person, I say go for it, get up early, get the day started. If you like to sleep in a little bit later, you might be more productive when you've had that sleep. So, really, it's an individual basis. And what I've been really good about, and I'm happy with myself for, is, if I pay attention to how I'm feeling. So, if I feel like writing, I have a lot of writing to do, I get in the mood and I crank it out. If I'm not feeling it, I switch to something else that I can do that I probably be in a better mood for. And if I'm feeling like I had something horrible happen to me or just a really bad rejection and I feel I'm in a negative space and I'm just not progressing, I take a little time off. I take an hour off. I get some fitness. I spend some time with my children. And I think that's what's important. It's okay if we're not working 9 to 5 every day. We can work, 8 to 3, whatever it is, take a little break and then come back to it in the evening. And I think it's important to do whatever works best for you, but to plan as much as possible and try to be consistent about it. And then to be as productive as possible when we are working. So we're not wasting our time. We could say, oh, I'm going to sit in front of my desk from, 9 to 6. And really, we're checking our phone, we're playing, we're doing all kinds of other things that we shouldn't be. So, really, if we're not feeling it, it's better just to take that quick break and come back to it refreshed when we can concentrate better. And again, it's individual, prioritize around your deadlines and your meetings, of course, but then try to be flexible and try to commit to finishing 2 to 3 important items every day and then several others. I always have a list every day that I refer back to and I cross off and I come back to the next day. And I think that's the best way, because if you set those little goals for yourself, you'll accomplish and you'll stay on track and then you'll keep moving forward. So always keep a list, break larger projects down into micro steps, because sometimes we feel overwhelmed. So if we have those little mini steps, we can start crossing them off a little at a time. And something else that I really suggest is to tackle those things that are mundane that you don't like to do first and get them out of the way. So then you can move on to those things that you really enjoy.
Yeah, I think I always try and get a few successes under the belt early in the morning,
Yes.
tick them off. It certainly sets me up for the tougher challenges, but obviously don't avoid the other challenges, which a lot of people I clearly see can do. Oh, I'll put that off till a bit later, and you always find a reason to delay some things. But do you think some of the issues, I'm thinking now about conditioning, we all obviously go to, in your case, high school, college, or school that we just referred to, and you go in and you have your assembly, as we do in the UK at least, and then you have to sit down at a desk and you're there for a very structured day. And then when you go out into the working world, you've got a similar thing. A lot of guys have to punch the time clock and then they have to attend a certain location for a certain amount of time. Do you think that's why people really struggle in having that flexibility, introducing that flexibility into their life, when they've been taught from a very early age that actually, no, when you're working, you are sat at a desk and you have to do the classic 8:30 till 5 or whatever the case may be? Do you think that's part of the problem, the conditioning we've been forced into?
I think so. I think you're absolutely right. And I think now that during the pandemic, when I've always worked from home, I would say for about 15 years now. So I'm an old pro at this and I've gotten better at being flexible. And as a single mother, it's just, really saved me. And that's why I stayed with one company for years, as I had that ability. But I think now that so many more people have been working from home and they've gotten sort of a taste of that flexibility, I think we're changing as a society. I read some study that said 40 something percent of people would quit if they were forced to go back in the office. So I think we are changing, but still, you're right. We've been conditioned to sit at a desk, to be in a certain space, and it's harder for us to bounce back and forth between the two. But I think that if we do and we pay attention to our environment, we'll be more in balance with everything that we need to get done, and we'll be more productive too.
Good, good. Um, Creating a vision, and that can be quite tough, when we talk about taking action. But there's a few steps before then in trying to understand what it is you want to do, what you feel you're good at, how you set goals. We all know about the classic SMART goals, and then planning out the process. All those things are quite overwhelming. And very easily you can say, oh, crikey, I can't do all this. Then the procrastination sets in, everything else. So just thinking about tools and ideas for people to help them simplify those kind of things, get some structure and sort of lay out their success path. Are there sort of things that you could recommend that work for you?
Definitely. So I say keep a list of all of your goals and sort of classify them and then sort of break them down into the minor or little micro steps that it will take to make it actually happen. And when you're first starting off with anything, a business in general, it helps to really think about those areas that you are skilled at, your expertise, what you're most passionate about. Because when you're in business, you have to have that love and that passion to get up and do it every single day. And it's so much easier to do if you're involved with something that you really like and that you enjoy and you feel that you're making a difference. And I often suggest, a lot of people, we talked about risk taking a little bit and what a risk it is to become an entrepreneur. So I like to suggest that people start as a side hustle. That way they can do a little bit at a time and it's not so overwhelming. So breaking things down makes it more digestible. And that's really my biggest piece of advice when it comes to attacking your goals. Make a list of those things that you want to attack, approach it, come up with plan A, plan B, plan C. Expect things to go well, but know that there's a possibility that it won't go exactly how you
Yeah.
expect. And then have that other plan ready. I think that happens a lot for people is that they have one specific plan. It doesn't turn out how they expected. And then they're sort of devastated and they're not sure how to regroup. So getting to do as much research as you can beforehand will really help you there, getting to know your market, your target customers, and getting it all done. I'm a big fan of research. Sometimes, like if I feel like it's overwhelming, I want to, pitch to a lot of different people or I want to do a bunch of things. I spend maybe one day or a couple hours one day doing the research, laying everything out so that when I'm ready to actually do the pitches or make the calls or follow up on that, I have my list ready to go and I can start doing it back to back. So look for those little time savers, those little tricks and hacks that you can break things down into steps and then just tackle it a step at a time so that it's less intimidating and more digestible.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad you mentioned the word pitches there, because there's almost like a requirement now for you to be able to, in business, do Facebook Lives, do videos, record things on YouTube. And many people are really uncomfortable with those kind of things. Certainly in front of the camera, it can be quite daunting. It's bad enough hearing my own voice. That's bad enough without necessarily seeing me on camera. Now, you've become quite a pro at that. You've certainly had lots of experience in front of the camera. How do you learn to project yourself well in front of the camera when perhaps you haven't got a rolling script in front of you? How do you remember all the things and how do you recite the things that are important?
Interesting. So I'm actually naturally pretty introverted, but I've worked on it over the years and kind of come out of my shell. And I remember we were teaching courses. At one point, I was teaching marketing courses and they started requiring us to do videos. And I thought, oh no, I don't want to do a video, And I can look back and then I sort of became more comfortable with it. And I did a lot of work in course development and then I started doing videos for courses. So I sort of began just dipping a toe in, I guess you'd say, and getting more comfortable over time. And I got a lot of tips from people there, about reading the teleprompter. But I found that for me, and it's different for all people, I like to have general notes, but I don't like to memorize anything because I don't think it sounds as natural. So I kind of get an idea generally about what I want to talk about. And another thing that really helps too is to not focus on being perfect. You're not going to be perfect. If you try to make everything really perfect, you'll be starting and stopping and starting and stopping, and you just get better over time. So just practice makes perfect. personal branding, as you said, is so important. And, it's just one of those things that you have to begin by thinking about what you want to be known for, what you want to talk about, what you want to speak about, and then kind of dividing it up into maybe two or three areas and then putting content out. And I remember when I first got started, I thought, where do I begin? And an easy way for me, because I like to write, is I started with my blog, which I could do as part of my website. And somebody wrote me a message on Instagram recently about an article I did on personal branding. And they said, thank you. That really helped me. I was struggling with how to put myself out there. And I remembered, I thought back, I remember when I first started out and I would reread everything before I posted it, 5 or 6 times. Is that good? Will that, be the right thing, the wrong thing? And at some point you let that go and you start putting more and more out and you sort of lose that. Of course, you want to be careful of what you say and put a lot of thought into it, but you can't second guess yourself all the time. And I guess that would be my piece of advice, is just to start somewhere, to practice, and know that, nobody's perfect. You'll grow over time.
Yeah, I guess the things that are quite difficult is when you see such great guys as Tony Robbins, the big guys who are able to stand up in front of an audience of thousands for hours. They set an extremely high bar to jump over. And certainly in myself, you compare yourself against these people, and there feels there's such a huge gap, the divide between where you are and where they are. You think, hey, I'll be crazy if I go and try and do this stuff like these experts do, then I'm going to look foolish. So I don't want to put myself out there. And I guess a lot of people feel the same about that. But it's difficult to overcome those fears, that angst that actually happens in our head. So certainly from a personal perspective, I find that quite intimidating.
It is, but you have to remember, Tony Robbins started somewhere too. I'm sure he had his first talk and he felt the same way. I mean, he's a master, and everyone has their own personality and their own style. So the best thing we can do is be authentic and be ourselves, connect with people, try to help people. Not everyone is going to like us, it's just impossible. We can't be that for everyone. So the best thing you can be is yourself. Keep putting content out there, keep trying, and over time, again, you'll grow into where you're meant to be. Not everybody can be Tony Robbins, but you can be your own version, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's the other thing you just touched on there, is where no matter what you do and how well you do it, there's always somebody who's going to take an exception or
Yes.
feel they have to say something that's not very kind. And that sometimes you take personally. And that's a difficult lesson to learn, isn't it? That not everybody you're going to please all the time.
Yeah, definitely. I remember when I first got on Twitter, I was sort of one of those also. You'd be surprised because I love social media now, but I was slow to get on. I was a little resistant about putting myself out there. And remember when I was first on Twitter and somebody that wasn't following me retweeted a tweet of mine and said, just something I can't even remember. It was really negative about the tweet. And, I thought, oh, that I was just heartbroken,
Yeah.
crestfallen. Why would this person do that? And I had to take a step back, not respond, and just kind of research a little more. Well, I come to find out that this person, was doing this to a lot of people. He only had 4 or 5 followers or something. So it wasn't like he was sending it out to a
Yeah.
huge audience, but it still hurt my feelings. But when I look back, I'm happy that that happened because it kind of prepared me. Okay, this is what happens when you put yourself out there. Not everyone is going to be a fan. And so I always suggest, when something like that happens, don't respond right away. See if there's anything in what they're saying that you can learn from that is feedback for you to improve. Maybe you're rubbing someone the wrong way. See what you can take. And then, also realize that sometimes people are just putting hate out there because they're haters, and it really has more to do with them than you. So just look at it from that perspective. Another thing I like to tell people is sometimes, and this often happens a lot at work or in the workplace, we feel like somebody doesn't like us or they're trying to sabotage us or it's not working well. And we get all these ideas in our head. And really, it may be, and probably it has nothing to do with anything we're thinking. So the best thing we can do is try to approach in a nice way that person, just maybe ask, hey, I feel like maybe there's something wrong here. Have I done something to offend you? Is there a reason I didn't get this position? Just try to get to the heart of the matter. And 9 times out of 10, it will be something completely different than what you imagined. We tend to think there's something wrong with us or blame ourselves when maybe that's not even the case. So try to just take the emotion out of it. And I know that's hard to do a lot of times, because we'll take things personally, but try to do it. See if there's anything you can get. Sometimes maybe it has something to do with you, or there's been a rift, and maybe you can repair it and maybe you can't, but you won't know until you try to get that information and try to fix the situation.
Absolutely. We're talking about the pandemic a little bit earlier on, and obviously for many people, it's far from over. I know a number of people in India where it's particularly challenging, should we say, at the moment. Um, and it's not over. The people and the businesses remain unable to operate, obviously, in a normal way. And many people are still working from home. What sort of things do you think could help people feel more engaged with their community, the workplace, their family, um, now more than ever, while the uncertainty is still there? Is there certain things that you think are particularly beneficial?
I think, trying to get that engagement however you can, trying to plan something with your families. I know we spoke a little earlier. I have two teens and it's hard to get them engaged with pretty much anything I suggest, but trying to really latch on to whatever ideas they have, trying to get outside. I think, exercise, taking care of ourselves is so important. Just
Yeah.
getting outdoors, stopping in the middle of the day and just resetting, even waving at a neighbor, whatever it is, and just setting up those virtual Zoom meetings with friends, trying to connect. I know, several of my friends who are working moms here in Charlotte, we all got together at one point during the pandemic and we just, commiserated like, oh my goodness, this has been so challenging and so rough. And I think it's just knowing that other people are going through the same thing as you. I often recommend too for entrepreneurs, it's just lonely in general as an entrepreneur, but particularly now. So setting up mastermind groups, maybe 3 or 4 other people who are like yourselves, meeting, maybe it's only once a month, whatever it is, so you can kind of throw ideas off each other, talk through what's going on. Just building that connection and that community is so important for all of us, no matter what we're working on right now, and just really making sure that we're taking care of ourselves, that we're eating well, that we're getting outdoors, that we're getting that exercise, doing anything we can to improve our mindset. I know that works for me whenever I'm feeling down. If I, go kayaking or spend some time doing something else, just resetting my mindset. So trying to do those little tricks just to build connection. And hopefully we'll be out of this soon and we'll be adjusting and pivoting once again to more changes in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned two things there. Certainly, when we were in lockdown, we were able to go out for a walk. And it's something my wife and I made a condition of every single day. Um, Unless it was absolutely terrible weather, we go out for a decent walk every day and every weekend. And that was very refreshing. It made us a little bit more connected, should we say, with nature. And as there are so few vehicles actually on the roads at that time, there certainly were no planes in the sky. It was a different feeling altogether. And I would certainly strongly recommend that. And then we also mentioned food. And I'm one of the guys who like Jim Quick, and he talks a lot about nutrition. And you mentioned food there. I don't think people necessarily realize the connection between what you eat and how it affects you. Have you got any particular thoughts on that?
Yes, the better care we take of ourselves, the better off we'll be in our business. So that means eating well, eating healthy foods, drinking lots of water, those simple things that our moms told us when we were growing up. Have your veggies, have your salads, really improves your mental processes. You feel better, your mindset is better. And even just getting enough sleep, we neglect our sleep so bad, particularly as entrepreneurs, those people who are juggling lots of things. We kind of think if we give our all to our business, we work night and day, that our business will be better. And when in fact, we're being less productive, we're not as good with our clients, we're not as good with our employees. So it's actually better to do those things that improve our health. And scheduling meals, scheduling breaks, having a snack, having that water, whatever it is, even just getting up from your desk is so critical. And there are a lot of little things like that you can do at your desk. Exercises, we have standing desks now, we have those little machines where you can actually do like a bicycle under your desk, whatever it is, to pay attention to how you're doing physically, because I'm just a firm believer in fitness. I try to eat healthy. I'm not always perfect. And probably during the pandemic, I've gotten a little worse because I've been keeping goodies for my teenagers to keep them happy. And I have a hard time staying out of those goodies, more so than I would before. But trying to do what you can, because if you're not eating healthy, you'll be sluggish and you won't be good for anyone.
Yeah, certainly we try and avoid processed foods and as much healthy, where we can, organic foods as we can. It's not always easy. It's
It
not
is.
necessarily always on the shelves, are they? Okay, I'm just conscious of the time, and there's one thing I particularly would like to talk to you about before we enable people to know how to get in contact with you.
Sure.
One particular thing is mentors. Now, people, certainly myself, to say, why do I need a mentor? You're quite happy reading a book, watching a YouTube video, perhaps watching a movie that has some specific point. But actually engaging with a mentor is quite a daunting task. How would you suggest people go about finding a mentor that's appropriate for them? And what would you say are the real benefits of a mentor for people to be able to move forward with their journey?
So the idea of mentoring has, kind of evolved over the years. It used to be a long time ago when we were staying at a company for 40, 50 years, somebody in the company took us under their wing and kind of ushered us along. And that just doesn't happen as much anymore. A lot of people think that they need to ask someone formally to be their mentor. And, although people want to help, a lot of times it's like a time constraint. So I think we need to open up and expand our vision of mentors out there. And it can be someone that we go to once just to get some ideas. I know when I got into book publishing, I didn't know anything about that industry, anything about that business. So I would meet with different people and find out as much as I could. And that's great. You can have different mentors all the time. Also, as an entrepreneur, you can have a specific mentor. And what I think are some of the benefits, we can think of it as a consultant, a mentor, someone just to bounce ideas off of. A lot of times you have all the ideas yourself, but you need somebody to kind of talk them through. I like to talk about it like it's a therapist for your business, right? It's somebody
Yeah.
who helps you get organized. Entrepreneurs always have a lot of ideas, and sometimes it's very hard for them to streamline and focus on their goals, maybe two or three at a time instead of 50 at once, and kind of move forward with those next steps. And I think that's really where a mentor comes in is invaluable. They kind of give you that guidance and help push you forward. You're doing a lot of this work yourself, obviously, but they're going to help you push it to the next level. So when looking for a mentor, think about, maybe someone whose skills and expertise complements your own, someone you have a good rapport with and that you'd like to work with and kind of get to know, and that can help push you forward. I think it's definitely important. It's not getting a mentor doesn't need you to mean you don't know what you're talking about or you need help all the time. It's just the opposite of that, actually. It's just someone who can help you take your ideas and do things a little differently than what you're doing and give you other suggestions. It's someone to push you a little bit further.
Yeah, that's right. Because you're certainly right that it's so easy to be distracted. We
Yes.
absolutely know that our devices are constantly distracting us. And you see another really good post about some other software, another shiny object, another way of doing things, and you can't help but have a look. And it takes a lot of discipline to stop yourself doing that. Otherwise, you're forever chasing that moving feast. So yeah,
Definitely.
yeah. And I said having somebody independent who's hopefully has been there before
Yes.
and can say, look, these are the things that I can recommend because I know they work. Try and
Yes.
avoid these other things, etc. I think that's where you need that independent advice. Whereas family advice is nice, but they haven't been the successful entrepreneur that perhaps you're aiming to be.
Absolutely. And it's that accountability a partner who holds you accountable. This is what you said
Absolutely.
you were going to do. Where are you at with this? Okay, here are the next steps, and here's what I advise. And it's just pushing you a little bit further along in your journey. And it's particularly if you're a solopreneur all alone, it's nice to have that person there to support you.
Yes, absolutely. So you mentioned all the things that you are actively engaged in. Um, People are bound to want to find out more about you, what you do, what you offer. Certainly, go and buy the book without a doubt, and look up and pre-order the future books, I hope to say. So where's the best places to find out about yourself and your work?
Sure. So you can find out all about me on my website, which is charlenewalters.com. I'm on social media everywhere, as I mentioned. I'm either Charlene Walters, PhD, or C. Walters, PhD. And I throw the PhD in there because there are a lot of Charlene Walters in the world. That makes it very easy to find me. And I'm happy to connect with you on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram tend to be where I'm most active, but I'm also on Facebook and Clubhouse. And if you're interested in the book, you can find out more at launchyyourinnerentrepreneur.com. That's the name of the book, Launch Your Inner Entrepreneur. And it's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, everywhere books are sold. Even Walmart, I found it on there too. So if you're interested, I wouldn't hate it if you checked it out. And again, I'm just wishing you the best with your business and everything you have going forward as we emerge from the pandemic.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. There's so much information about you out there. It's quite incredible. I'll leave you one last question. Look forward 10 to 20 years. What's your vision for Charlene Walters? And what do you think you'll be aiming to impact mostly on the world with your thoughts and training?
Ooh, 10 to 20 years from now. Well, I'm hoping I'm living on the beach somewhere. I've got to be honest with you. Hopefully I've got a few more books under my belt, and I'm just hoping that, I can continue to support other people out there, people who need support, particularly as those people who are sole breadwinners or entrepreneurs just starting out in business. I love to give back. I love to continue to volunteer like I'm doing now. Of course, we'll be right there rooting for my kids like I always am, and for my clients that I've helped, just moving forward in business. So I hope good things, hopefully, relaxed, writing books, doing all the things I enjoy.
Excellent. That sounds so good. I can appreciate those visions myself. Thank you very much. Well, it's been stunning today. You've managed to talk about so many things in such a short period of time. You clearly are full of information, and I certainly recommend everybody to follow your work. I'd like to thank you very much for spending the time with us today, and hopefully it's not been too painful for you.
Not painful at all. And thank you so much, Dave. I really had such a good time. It was a blast, and hopefully we'll get to collaborate again in the future.
Absolutely. I look forward to it. Take care. Thank you then. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. Please subscribe and leave a positive review if you can spare a minute or two. If you would like to contact me, my email address is david@thereallifebuyer.co.uk, or find me at Real Life Buyer on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, where you're welcome to direct message me. I look forward to you joining me on future episodes. Take care, and remember, save money and buy smart.